Hi, Julie here. I'm going to take you on a little walk through an update in Lightroom Classic. So I am going through version 13. So if you haven't updated your Lightroom Classic, you won't see these updates. But if you have already updated it, maybe you've seen it but you weren't quite sure what to do with some of the new features. So a new one that's been put in, which is the color mixer, which is actually pretty cool. I've been playing with this one for a little while now, and I'm just going to show you the basics, but there's so much more that you can do with it. So I've got this pretty cool image that I took of this model who was all dressed up as a sort of a clown-ish type thing, or a carnival theme, and the backdrop was actually purple. And when I captured it in camera, for whatever reason, due to what my white balance was set to or whatever, it has come up as blue. Now if I zoom in and have a look at her hair, you can see a little bit of purple coming through the hair. So that's what I want to bring it back to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the sample picker and I am going to pick a spot and it'll come up here. That will then allow me to come through and change the color. Now how quick and easy was that? It did, however, change all of the colors. I may not want to change these ones, so I'll show you how we can get around that in a minute. Now you can play with the hue shift, which will go either end of the blue spectrum, because it was blue to start with, so that will give me aqua right through to magenta. So I'm just going to pick a color that I want it to go to. Let's just come back to about there. I think that's pretty right. I'm just eyeballing that. You can, this range may be turned off. You can turn this on, and you can come through and you can play with that range even more, the saturation even more, and the luminance. So there's also this little visualize range, so you can see what's being affected and what's not, so you can play around with that as well. Now if you don't want to, obviously what's in black and white is not being affected. Now as I said before, the colors on her top got changed as well, and you may not want them to. So I'm just going to go back into my history, and what I can do now is I can go into my masking tool and I can ask it to select the background. So if I put my mask on, it has come through and it's done a pretty good job. Now I can actually see when I zoom in here, there is in fact some of that purple there. Now I can ask it to add to the selection, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn that off for the moment. I'm going to come in with my color picker. I'm going to select that background and I'm going to bring it over. Now you'll see where it hasn't picked up those bits. So if I was to come into my mask here, I could then make that a bit bigger. I can add to it, so I could tell it to brush in those little bits. Might want to make my brush just a bit smaller, I think, so I can go through and alter that. Now I actually think without the mask it did a better job, but you just have to play around with it. But like I said, I'm just going to give you a brief look at how it all works. So you have got the mixer, so or the point color, I should say. You've got that in the mask as well as in the basics panel. So if I just come and close that. So the color mixer is lots of fun that you can play with. Now there is actually just your standard mixer, so your HSL, so you can come through and you can play with that, or you can play with the point color. So that is awesome. The other thing that is in here is the lens blur, and it's got here early access. So it's still in testing stages, I guess, at the moment. So, and they're asking you to give your feedback on the lens blur. So it's sort of like a beta test with inside the update. So I'm just going to click apply, and it's going to take a minute or two to analyze it. And I can tell it to subject focus. So I want to set the focal range with AI, so I'm going to play with that. And what it's going to do is it is going to blur, in theory, everything around her. And you can change the bokeh, whether you want just a modern circular lens, spherical aberration, 5-blade, things like that. So you've got different bokeh that you can add or have it coming into the background with the blur. So you can visualize the depth. All of this just takes a minute for it to go through. So what we want to do is we want to blur the background considerably. It just takes a bit of a second. When I'm recording and doing stuff like this, it just takes a little bit to there we go. So if I go and have a look at the before and after, you'll see not only the color change, but there's also quite a lot of blur that I have put in there as well. So her hands have blurred because of where I set the blur point. You're getting a little bit of blur happening on this as well, but you are getting quite a lot of blur happening on the background. So that sample might be a little difficult to see with the background all pretty much one color, but if I have a look at this one, it's a great image, but the background is quite wrinkled. So if I click on apply, I can then come through and I can set, and I'm sure you can see it now, how that has blurred it out. So I can play with the different bokeh. Quite like that one. And then I can play around with the range of how much is in focus. So as you can see, that's actually put her face out of focus and the background in focus. So I want to keep her in focus and blur out the background. So there's this visual depth that you can see and you can play around. So what is in black and, or what's in black and white is being affected, and what is in color is not affected. So I don't want her to be affected, I just want that background. So I'm going to just play around with that. Sometimes I find that using that visual depth thing is a little bit more difficult to work with. I find it's actually easier to come in and just sort of eyeball it. So as I see it there, she's completely out of focus and it's just the background, and I want to blur that edge off. So everything's pretty much in focus. It's still where her feet is, it's still a little bit out of focus, but if I was to blur all that foreground, then it would blur all her legs as well. And of course you can adjust the amount of blur. You can go more, you could go less. So if you've got a forest in the background or something like that, that could work really well, and you can boost it a little bit as well. So that is the new features in Lightroom. So you've got the point color, and this could be used not just for backgrounds. If you actually wanted to pick a specific color within an image, say if I want to pick this one, I could boost the colors just in that image. You could multiply, you could use it multiple ways is what I was trying to say. Not just for a background. You can, if there was a sunset or something like that where you wanted to play around with the colors and the hues within your sunset, you could do that as well. So there's a lot of fun there. So that's the point color in the color mixer and lens blur. So have fun. Thanks for watching.